Okay, so let's revisit the Pythagorean theorem. Most of you would have done this in the past, and it's when we're dealing with a right angle triangle, we can find out sides A, B, and C by looking at the longest side squared the longest side is the hypotenuse, if you've forgotten, squared equals the legs squared and added together. So what that formula looks like is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So under what conditions can you use Pythagorean theorem? Well, we can use Pythagorean theorem as long as it's a right angle triangle and you know two lengths. Okay, we could find the third length if we wanted to, either a leg or the hypotenuse. So this says determine the length of the diagonal of this square. So we want to find out the length of D. First thing we need to recognize is, are we looking at the hypotenuse or are we looking at one of the legs? And in this case, the hypotenuse, and in all cases, is always going to be across from our 90-degree angle. So in this case, we're looking at the hypotenuse. So we're going to just use the standard formula, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Now I've just put what I found or looking for on the left-hand side. So in this case, we've got d squared equals 5 squared plus 5 squared. Now, 5 squared is 25, so we get d squared equals 25 plus 25, which is going to be 50, and then I have to square root it to find my answer. So root 50. That's the exact answer. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the year, that sometimes it's better to just leave an answer the way it is. And in this case, we would just leave root 50. If you were to square root it, it's going to give you 7.1 approximately. So that's not really going to help us. So root 50 is fine, but if you wrote 7.1 centimeters, I wouldn't tell you it's wrong. I said that we are going to use the regular formula. The other formula, so we have c squared equals a squared plus b squared. That's the most common one. The other formula would be if I wanted to find one of the legs, and I can make a and b whatever I want. I could make this a and this b, or if I wanted to, I could make this a and this b. So it doesn't really matter which side we're looking for. We could say that b squared equals, all we have to do is we have to subtract the a over to the other side. So it's going to be c squared minus a squared. Okay, so we can use that kind of formula as well. Determine the distance between the 2 points on the grid. Now, what a lot of people would try to do is they would try to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and see if they could kind of count that distance, but we're looking down. We're going 1, 2, 3 down, and we're going 1, 2, 3, 4 across. So really, we've got a Pythagorean theorem question here. And we can just say c squared equals a squared plus b squared again. We know we're looking for c squared, and a is going to be 3 squared. B we could call 4 squared, and if you switch those around, if you made it 4 squared plus 3 squared, it wouldn't really matter. So we're going to get c squared equals 9 plus 16. C is the square root of 25, so c equals 5. Now it says what's the distance between these 2 points? We're just going to say 5 units, because nowhere on the graph does it actually say like centimeters or anything like that. All right, so looking at this last question, the last one is kind of what we've been talking about the whole time. The last one is talking about finding another length. So I'll show you both ways. If we use c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And we subbed in. We know our hypotenuse is 13. That's what we see. The other two don't actually matter. So I could say a squared, or let's say 5 squared, plus b squared. Well, 13 squared is going to give us, 169. So we've got 169 equals 25 plus b squared. Well, if I subtract that 25 over, I get 144 equals b squared, and 12 equals b. So b is 12 centimeters, so there's my solution. If I wanted to, I could have done it like this, though. I could have said b squared equals c squared minus a squared equals 13 squared minus 5 squared equals 169 minus 25. This is b squared all the way down. And then b equals the square root of 144, and b equals 12 centimeters. It's the same thing, same steps pretty much. It's just one rearrangement is done before subbing in and one is done after. Here are some questions for this.